So we have a cracking series on YouTube called The Mixing Bowl, and one of the questions that one of the viewers asked is about shock leaders, and Joe and I went into depth talking about what we do and why we use shock leaders and the implications of the advantages and the applications. And of course what has arisen from that is somebody wanting to know how to actually tie one on. Now there are several different ways to tie a shock leader on, and I think you have to find a personal preference, which is what I recommend to most people when they say, what should I do with this, what should I do with that? Well, for me it's about personal preference. You have to find what you're comfortable with and what works best for you. Now this particular method that I use for tying it on, which is an ALBRIGHT knot, is one that I learnt to use it for tying mono shock leaders to braid main lines, but then I've adopted that into my mono to mono shock leaders as well, because I find that it works really well. It's the same style of knot that I use for both, but I just use less turns with mono than I do with braid. I only use 6 turns when I'm using mono, and I use 9 turns when I'm using braid. And when I show you the knot, I think you'll probably understand why that is. So I'm just going to run through. I've put myself a nice white cloth down here so you can see what you need, and apart from the two materials that you're going to use, the two monos, one being a thicker one than the other, the only thing I need to use this knot is for mono to mono is a pair of nail clippers. So what diameters are people using? It's strangely enough, a friend of mine called me a couple of days ago and said, I'm going to be fishing at distance for carp, what would you use? And he wants to fish a method feeder at sort of 60-70 metres and felt like he needed a lower diameter main line, and for that I recommended 20 5-pound, and to that I think if you're casting 30-45 gram feeders, then an 8-pound shock leader will suffice, but there's no harm in going to 10-pound. But that's all about diameters as well, because ultimately breaking strains as they go up, so do the diameters of the material that you're using. So for me personally, I think to be on the safe side, you know, I can recommend a 10-pound shock leader, which is 0.28 in diameter, and that will suffice you. But try and balance it up. If you're not going to be casting heavy weights, massive distances, but you still need a shock leader for lower diameter, or if you're using braid, then try and use the smallest diameter shock leader you can get away with, because ultimately that will reduce the knot size where you're connecting it to your main line. So let me walk you through how I do that. So most importantly is just get yourself comfortable. Now I actually find that it's easier to tie it when I'm tying it through a rod, because ultimately my main line would already be through my rod, up my reel and back again. But I've just got myself organised here so I can try and demonstrate this knot. So here's my shock leader material, which in this case is a 10-pound or 28 detection, and I'm taking that main line, and the shock leader material rather, the first thing I'm doing is just folding it back on itself. So top and bottom of it is, I'm just creating a doubled up section, and leave yourself enough room to work. In this case that's about 5 or 6 inches, and that forms a little loop at one end. And then take your given main line, as I said, you can do this for braid or you can do it for mono, and pass it through the loop and pull it through by about 6 inches itself. And then while holding the shock leader material in one hand and your main line and the loop in the other, wrap it round 6 times, take the end of the main line, pass it back through itself, and what you've actually done is almost whipped it. So you're actually whipping the main line around the shock leader, and what's actually happening is it's almost like the whipping of a hook, and when you're biting down on that, what's actually happening is I'm getting that a good tug like that, and what's actually happened is you've got the two ends of one of the shock leader line, it's through, it's folded, your main line is wrapped around it, passed through, and it's hitching tight. And what's actually happening with the shock leader material, it's coming back at parallel angle to the shock leader, which means that your little trimming piece is pointing parallel to the main line, and that's the advantage of this knot, because it goes through your rod guides a lot smoother, because your tags are not at 90 degrees, they're folding back on themselves. And then because I'm using nail clippers, that allows me to get nice and tight up against the knot, and when you rub your fingers along an ALBRIGHT knot, you'll know that it's nice and smooth and you don't have any big tags, and that allows it to pass through the rings, and when you're casting, it's nice and smooth, it's nice and simple. You don't get anything. The reason I prefer it is because there's no tags to gather weed, so you don't get as many bits of weed or debris that you're catching on when you're fishing, and it doesn't gather, because when you wind your shock leader back through the rings of your rod, the problem with a big knot that gathers weed is you can't get it through your top ring. It does help if you have a nice rod with big eyes when you're shock leader fishing, but if you don't have that luxury, then for me the ALBRIGHT knot is an absolute beauty. That was 6 turns. If you're doing it with braid, just do 9 and you will get a lovely silent through your rings knot called an ALBRIGHT knot, and it's as simple as that.